Throughout my adult life, my focus has been on making the world a more beautiful place. Initially, I pursued this goal as a hairstylist, working on the external appearance of individuals to make them feel more beautiful. However, I wanted more, so I began to shift my focus to helping people make better choices and achieve greater beauty from within. As a transformational life coach, I specialize in helping you identify and change the limiting beliefs that may be holding you back. Join me each week as we discuss, interview, teach, and explore the fundamental principles of healthy relationships. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Louisa. In today's episode of Conscious Conversations with Louisa, I'm speaking with Maris and Ken Segal. They are truly one of my most favorite human beings and couples on this planet. And I'm so honored to have you guys here. And I welcome everyone. And we're really going to jump right in because I know how valuable time is. And I really want to make sure everybody gets the most out of this session. So welcome everyone. And David Reed, please do the voice of God.
Well, like Louisa said, Ken Ashby and Maris Segal are America's master connectors, coach and consult with executives, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and rising leaders to bring their professional and personal philanthropic, vision to life. And as authors and speakers, they are featured in 13 Amazon best-selling leadership-centered books and recently spoke on a TEDx stage. Ken and Maris lead by the philosophy that we are all connected as humans first. And that's really where the bottom line begins. And their new best-selling book, The RFactor, Universal Rhythms for Leading Prosperous Relationships, sits at the core of their work as certified executive and relationship coaches. And I don't think I need to say any more than that. So without ado, turning it back over to Ken and Maris and Louisa.
Didn't he do a fabulous job?
Wow. Love that. David, you're hired forever.
Right?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And my prices start very low. Louisa got a family rate, but we're going to go up from there. So,
I completely get that. I completely get that. And you're worth every penny, dollar, million.
Yes.
Yes, the big bucks goes your way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, honestly, welcome. And as I was saying to you guys before we jumped on, one of my favorite things about you is really the fact that not only do you talk about relationships, teach relationships, I've been part of your relationship and being in your circle, in your space, in your environment, and you truly live what you teach. I would love to go back and I know you guys have been working together before you became a couple. What was that relationship like as this is all starting to unfold for you?
So is it my turn or your turn? we take turn. We literally take turns telling the story. So I'll start with a brief connection, then we'll have Ken pick it up. So as we know, every relationship begins with a connection. We are thrilled to be here connecting with all of you guys tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the RFactor because the RFactor is literally relationship immersion. We are in relationship with someone or something from the time we wake up in the morning, right? Your alarm clock, your kids, your dog, your cat, your spouse, the television, your phone. How am I doing? Before you ever even get out of the house, right? So we are in relationship with someone or something 24/7, including while we sleep. Ken and I have known each other since 1980. That was when we first met. And we met in a global youth leadership organization that uses music as a vehicle for performing, for social impact, music and performing arts for social impact. That was how we met. Fast forward many years later, almost 20 years later, Ken and I got together. So there was this connection, right? We talk about how things build. He was married to someone else when I first met him. I was not yet married. And we just created a friendship. And so that was literally how our first connection began. And then we stayed kind of friendly over the years, not close friends, but friendly over the years. And then a number of years ago, there was a shift in both of our lives. Ken went through his divorce. I was going through my divorce. And we reconnected over dinner, which Ken considered a date. And I did not. I thought it was just friends getting together And Ken was certain that it was a date, and I was not on the same page.
It was a date. I picked you up in a car. I had aftershave on. It was a date in my mind.
Wait, hang on. Wait, I want you guys to notice what Ken just said. I had aftershave on. So is the app? You're not still putting aftershave on now for my dates now. This is important to know.
You're married.
So the aftershave, I think, is so funny.
So we had this half date. We had a half date. Only one of us was all in. And so then for a year and a half, I was emailing Maris. Oh, I'm going to be in New York. I'm working with a project. Oh, that's okay. I'm in Hong Kong, but you're welcome to stay at my apartment. I'm not looking for a place to stay. So for a year and a half, we emailed after this half date, and we spoke. Then we started speaking, and it was a year and a half later that we met in New York and had dinner and realized that there's something here. Yeah, and that's sort of a short story.
So that was actually. So then we did get together at that point. And kind of realize, okay, well, not only is there this kind of amazing connection between us, which we had both felt years before, but never went there, never told anyone, never went there, never had a conversation with anyone about it until Ken and I had dinner literally 15 years later. And we both sort of went, do you remember? And do you remember? And we both remembered the moment. So it was interesting that there was always this kind of energy, an energetic connection between us. But from that evening in New York, when we got together, one of the moments that was interesting for us is that when Ken told me he was coming into town, and I said, "Oh, what are you coming in for?" He said, "Well, I'm producing this big launch for an incredible organization, and it's a new not-for-profit that had literally not been announced yet." He was coming in to produce it, create the announcement, do the whole thing. He lived in Colorado at the time. As Ken is telling this story, I said, okay, I just need to have a moment that I get to share something with you. Literally the morning Ken told me that he was coming into town next week for this organization, I had been working on this organization's global marketing strategy, their whole relationship marketing program. Ken did not know that. I didn't know he was working on it. And it literally was not an organization that was announced yet. So I said to him, just so you know, I just turned into them their global marketing strategy this morning. So the connection between us that we had no clue about all of a sudden was getting bigger and bigger. And we kind of both went,
noted.
Interesting. And so it was just kind of a remarkable. So we'd known that there was this connection. And then literally once we got together, we also knew that we had similar backgrounds in terms of work. We had both been doing relationship marketing a long time. We had been doing event marketing a long time. We had both worked in, now at that point, nearly 30 countries globally. And knew that we were both aligned in our hearts and our spirits, but that's all we knew. So when we got together, Harvard was a client of mine, and I was asked to produce their global service celebration. And I turned to Ken and said, want to work together? And we both kind of created this moment of, yeah, let's do that. What would that be like? Now we know we're a couple and we're starting to work together. So what would that be like? And literally, it was the most amazing experience. We both stood at this event at one point, and Ken turned to me and said, do you want to direct or do you want me to? And in that moment.
And at the same time, I said, okay, if you direct, I'll be the voice of God, or you can be the voice of Goddess and I'll direct. We realized that we were interchangeable. That
it was all sort of fungible. It all just kind of worked.
And we could work together. And
I think what we learned really at that point was there's this rhythm. There was this connection and this flow between us that, frankly, over the years, people literally ask us every time they meet us and they know we work together. I don't think this has ever been the case where someone hasn't asked us, including governors. I mean, we've worked with people who have literally said to us, we were in a meeting with a governor at one point who turned to us and said, so how does that work? Like, I'm sorry, you're the governor, right? You're literally asking us this question. And we just so I was afraid to analyze it. I really was afraid to analyze it for the longest time.
So here's my question, because I know that having been divorced, you both have experienced what doesn't work. And I know that sometimes when you get divorced, or every time you get divorced, you go, well, these are areas that don't work. And I know here's where it went wrong. Did you guys bring any of that into this relationship and discuss the things that didn't go wrong, and how could we at this point do it differently?
That's a great question.
Great question. And I tell you one thing that I recognized about myself, that I took my relationship in my previous marriage, I took it for granted. It got to the point where I was taking it for granted. And as soon as you cross that threshold, and you're no longer keeping it fresh and keeping it at top of mind, and you take it for granted, that's a game changer. So for me, I said, okay, if I don't learn something from what I've been through, then what's the point? So, then you're just in a pattern. Right. And so I think I broke that pattern. I don't take Maris for granted. I don't do everything right all the time.
It gets messy, and that's okay.
But I don't take her for granted, nor do I take myself for granted.
And I think too that this piece of respect, expectations, like when we look at pain points in personal relationships as well as in professional relationships, because it's one life, right? It's not a personal life over there, a professional life over here. It is one integrated life. And when we look at it from that perspective, respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience are the four master universal rhythms that work. When they work in sync, and they're working all the time, then relationships are thriving, business deals are prospering, your family's doing great. But when one of those things gets out of sync, Ken stopped really respecting, right, his marriage, his relationship. He shifted in that. And so it started to break. There were other issues there. For me, I had a 7-year practice round, and kind of similar in that, less about, we didn't take each other for granted. We came to a point in our relationships that I was working through my trauma, drama, my baggage, my history, and learning to unplug from the past. And my ex, then my current, did not have the capacity, did not have the bandwidth to be able to break through and work through and do the work. And I kind of realized that I could either be a victim to that or stand responsible for understanding my role in it and then choosing from that place, right? And we always have a choice. We always have a choice.
Absolutely. And I feel like everybody that we go through brings us to where we need to be. So and I say this sentence all the time, you can't make the wrong person right and the right person wrong. Like, it's a journey to get to where we're at, but your physical body lets you know what's okay and what's not. One of the experiences that I have with both of you is such generous giving with unconditional space, that when Ken is doing something, I'm going to use the word for you, but it's really alongside you and generously giving. I have never felt it being conditional. It's always just this beautiful space of giving because he wants to. So that's, I keep seeing that in relationships where things have become so conditional. How do you guys keep that space of generously giving without an expectation?
Well, I would just jump in and say that, relationships, whether you're married relationships or relationships at work or relationships with family, it's not a one and done thing. You don't just have a good relationship and then, okay, that's good, checkbox, that stays forever. We're all going through changes, which is constant. And you get to adapt and you get to rethink and recommit and realign all the time. So it's that constant realignment, constant shifting, constant learning, constant curiosity. I always say to Maris, we will be talking and I'll say, I never knew that. You never told me that story. Again, today I learned something new about Maris, and I hope to learn something new every day about my partner, about my family, about all of those situations. So I think it is that.
And I'm going to add to that. I think that, to your specific point about giving without expectation, right? So one, expectation without agreement creates premeditated resentment. I just want to be sure everyone's hearing that. Expectation without agreement creates premeditated resentment. Now think about how that applies to relationships in your life where expectations that you have of a spouse, a friend, a family member, someone at work, where there's an expectation that is not in agreement. And so it's causing, right? So I think what we always know as a couple, because look, when you are living, loving, working together side by side 24/7, that's a lot of choosing 24/7, right? So when you're choosing from that space and there's already a trust, it really does. One of the pain points in relationships comes down to trust, right? And partly because if we don't fully trust ourselves, then we create greater conditions. We create conditionality in our giving because we need someone else to fill a hole that is not filled inside of us. Right? And so that starts to get us in trouble because when we're dependent on someone else for our happiness, that doesn't mean that I'm not expecting Ken to create a space that is safe. Yes, I am, but we are in agreement around that. And when we are not in agreement around that, there's conflict and we get to talk about it. And I think so often couples, when you think about couples who work together, couples who don't work together, anyone who's looking for love, we get to be whole and respect ourselves first, before we bring that into another relationship. And that's really the RFactor is about relational leadership. It's about leading your own life in every aspect of your life with all of these key rhythms. Because when you're out of sync, it means you're reacting to something versus responding, right? Which comes from an emotion from the past. And that creates the condition we've walked into. And we bring all that story into our relationships.
Absolutely. Here's I know I see a few people just hopped on. So I'm going to say you guys have been working together and had this gigantic, really successful life. And everything seems really easy when things are successful and you're both succeeding and life is great. But now you're in this beautiful relationship and COVID hits and this very successful life takes a very different turn. What happens to the two of you guys during an moment?
Wow, I would say that Maris calls it the pandemic pause. And nothing I would say takes away from the fact of the tragedy that happened during that time period.
For so many people. We lost family members, and certainly that is all crucial. On our personal life and our business life, we were so happy to take a breath, to take a pause. And we had actually been speaking about for a couple of years wanting to move out of transactional work into transformational work. How could we impact more lives? How could we be in a different space of service? How could we shift what we were doing? Because what we were doing was very celebrity driven, specially curated, very kind of high end, all experiential, tied to amazing relationships and not-for-profits and all that. And albeit incredible over 9 years, 300 programs, we were pretty burnt out. We were pretty burnt out.
So it wasn't a traumatic experience for you guys to go from wow, we're super successful and oh my God, what are we going to do? It really was a blessing for you.
Yeah, we call it, so Corona, for any of you who speak Spanish, Corona in Spanish is crown. And we really called it our crowning transformation. And because it truly shifted our whole lives. And while there was loss, while all of that was going on, the challenge, truthfully, with Louisa and all of that was the financial side, right? Is all of a sudden, what do you do? I mean, I was literally on a plane in Paris for Paris Fashion Week 2 days before, I came home on March 5th, I think it was. And a week later, there you go, right? So yes, life certainly shifted. The thing though, I'll tell you one of the things that really concerned me before I ever even talked to Ken about it. And that was Ken and I have spent years living, loving, working, playing together in a lot of doing. Now, all of a sudden, we were literally in a space of quiet being. And my fear was, oh my gosh, now what if Ken, after almost 20 years, really sees me? Is he going to get tired of me? What's really going to happen here? Is there going to be an awkwardness about us learning how to be together and not just be in the doing together? And I had some angst about that. And we did talk about it at one point. We actually laughed about it. We laughed about it kind of about 3 months in. So I said, okay, it's been quiet for 3 months. How we doing? He's like, more, please. Because we were getting quiet. Like Ken used to laugh about having a weekend wife and a work wife, and really during COVID, I became the integrated wife.
I love it. I think it's so fantastic because usually, for me, self-worth comes with doing well financially. And when the financially is no longer there, all of a sudden I'm like, how do I show up in this relationship if I don't have the financial aspect for me to say, I matter enough now? Yeah. So, to go from I'm succeeding to both of you being like a whole new place, but it sounds like you guys were actually looking forward to that. One of the things I got to do during COVID too was build another business through it, which I had been longing for my entire life. So for some, it was a major blessing to have that pause time. So it was for me also. And so how did you find transformation work, and how did that lead you to here?
Well, so we've been sitting in the transformational space for about 15 years. So that we've been doing quite a bit of work in this space. And because our work has always been centered on relationship building, so relationship marketing has been our background. And literally when we're talking about the work with credit card companies, executives and leadership, all the work we've done over the years, airlines and all types of, C-suite executives and their teams and their brands. So everything we did was centered on relationships. Over the years of the work we were doing, it was often centered, obviously, first on their consumer engagement. That was what we were hired to do. Very often then it would transition from that engagement into, now can we talk to you about how our teams are working in-house? How do we connect those dots? So we literally became kind of that engagement in-house as well, because we would see how different departments were working together or not. And that was so when you look at our relationship marketing work, transitioning then more into the leadership space was really natural because it's all centered on the human engagement. So we talk about our work as relational leadership. And it's really about finding the leader in yourself, cultivating the respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience, focusing on those, because each of those are about communication, listening, being present, right? Showing up committed, being able to reframe. So when you look at all that, we kind of sat and said, all right, let's analyze our relationship and literally see if there's something bigger here. And over the years, as we'd been working together, we literally started to poll our clients. And we found that the 4 key rhythms that worked for us, in fact, worked for every celebrity, worked for every, consumer, worked for every leadership person, every family member we talked to. And we found that these 4 key rhythms were, in fact, the step into transformational space that would help people heal relationship with themselves, relationship with their families, relationship with teams. So that was literally kind of what our transition became. And we got certifications. We started to do more work around it. We said, okay, we're going to commit. We're going to have a TEDx talk. We want to commit. We get to have a book. And we charted a path for the last 2.5 years.
I didn't realize I muted myself. I'm always so fascinated with you guys because as a hairdresser standing behind the chair for 25 years, I hear and see all of the fears people have and all of the things that stop them, to watch you both push forward so powerfully and to be part of that journey with you. I just love and celebrate the two of you, because it just makes me feel like I love unstoppable people. And I love being on this path alongside you guys and just keep being like, let's celebrate each other and keep winning. So I know I could spend the rest of the day asking you both questions, but I am going to open it up to everyone else having an opportunity to connect. So who would like to ask Ken and Maris a question, or just give them feedback from what they shared? And don't you all jump at the same time. Joe.
Joe. Hi, Joe.
I love Joe, by the way.
Joe, where are you zooming in from?
Unmute yourself, Joe. Hold on. You're muted, Joe.
That's the first time Joe has ever been muted.
He'll find the button.
He's like, Louisa said, if I stay on mute, this will be great for the podcast. By the way, just for everyone, this is all going to be recorded, obviously, and then it's going to stream into a podcast. So I hope you all are okay with that, because that's what's happening from here. I think there's way too much value in here for me to hide these interviews and store them in my
There's Joe.
There's Joe.
Yeah. My mouse
Joe.
quit for a while. Hi.
We get it.
Okay, so I gather from your words that you deal a lot on a corporate basis. You're dealing with major corporations or just multitudes of people and interacting. How does that affect your personal relationship to one another on a daily basis? Is it, what's the level of intimacy as opposed to the, putting the energy out into the corporate, groupings of people? How do you stay, fired up on the intimacy that you have?
Well, I think for me it's easy because I get to be with this lady. So, and I never take.
That's the best answer right there. Okay.
I never take it for granted. I don't take it for granted.
We don't, but Joe, it's a really important question, because when you're literally, look, we live in a space as humans where there's a very short distance between head and heart. And yet it could really be.
Well, taller people.
Well, taller people have more space. But, and literally, there could be a gap between the two of those that is as wide as from here to the end of the globe for some people. What we really find is that when we lead with our hearts, with our instinctual, with our nature, and our head and our traumas don't get in the way, it keeps us tuned in. And let me be really frank with you guys. This is not an assumption. This is not something that doesn't take work. What Ken and I have is magical, and we work on it every single day. And there are some days when our self-doubt, our frustration, whatever it is, pops in. I will give you a couple of examples. Ken and I have been walking in, actually a good example is one that happened a number of years ago. We were walking into a meeting with a very high level person, and we'd had this sort of awkwardness in the car. And literally before we walked in, we just kind of looked at each other and went, okay, we get to ground here before we walk in, because they're depending on us to deliver this important presentation. And if we are not connected, so what do we do? So, times we'll really look at each other and just go, okay, wife, husband, I love you. We're good. We got this. Professional, we got this. And we reground ourselves. But it takes time to learn how to respond versus react. That is not an assumption. And to your bigger point, Joe, who was so subtle about asking about how does the intimacy work, truthfully, on some days we get to say to each other, okay, I got to be off the clock now. I need downtime, date night. And we plan date nights. And Ken and I we've learned over the years, this is a funny thing, we've learned over the years that in our world, we are not able to say, okay, we're working all day and then we're talking to each other, and then all of a sudden one of us says, okay, I'm done. It doesn't work that way. And it doesn't work that way to say, okay, at night at dinner, for instance, when we go out to dinner, we can't talk business, because Ken and I are co-creating all the time. The stress often has come when we try to put it in a box and we say, okay, I'm done. When we're both done at the same time, we can say, okay, can we be done at 7? I really need a break. But we've learned that we both literally have a pen and paper together so that we can say, if Ken comes up with an idea over dinner, I'm like, wait, who's writing it down? Because we don't want to miss those moments either. So it took us time to navigate how best to create a connection for us that works, and for our clients that makes them comfortable knowing that we're also a couple, because they like that about us.
And do you have a mirroring process in the sense either other couples or, what inspires you in terms of all the work that you put into yourself? Is it just propelling because you're so involved in it? Or are there other couples that reinforce? I mean, because you're obviously presenting yourself as a couple. Very interesting. Very interesting. Being a couple is intense work.
I think that it, although it's not exactly the same, it goes back a little bit to, there are many couples that we look at and say, wow, that's so cool. That's great. I mean, we grew up in an agrarian society where, generally speaking, in that farming, I grew up on the farm, there was, you were both a male and female were putting together whatever it was that happened. The roles were a little bit different than maybe they are now. So this is a constant thing. And we are always, as Maris said, co-creating with each other. And everyone is co-creating in the relationships you're in. It's never one-sided. It is back and forth. Provided. Do they share the to and with? Share to and with.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that David has his hand up, and we'll get there in a second, David. But that you want, or did you want to go to the bathroom? Was that?
Hall pass.
So that one of the things we pay attention to is our words, and words matter. And just as an example, a couple of words that really matter is in relationships, being in relationships to something or being in relationship with something. If you think about your relationships, we've all talked about it before. Okay, I'm going to talk to them. Okay, that's not really being in a relationship, a give and take. So we really work on being in relationship with the many relationships you have, as opposed to being in a relationship to. You have a relationship to your vehicle, your car. However, when it's sitting in their driveway and you're in the house, when you get in the car, I really hope that you have a relationship with your car, because you need to feel when the brakes need to be applied. You need to feel when the turn is coming up.
And if you're not in relationship with your car when you get in it, could you be sure to let us know so we're not anymore? Because that's really scary.
So personal relationships are absolutely no different. When you're in a relationship, you need to know whether you need to put the brakes on. You need to know whether you make a shift to make a turn. You need to know whether you stop and park.
Yeah, absolutely.
So being in a relationship with is a key factor, I think, for us.
Well, I like what you said, because I believe it too, that words really matter, because you can't build trust unless the words are meaning the same thing, the energy that it takes to execute. You really have to have that honesty about the definition of the words that you use. It's the only way that I, know about building.
What's a relationship? What's a relationship, Joe?
Different things. The words mean different things to people all the time.
Joe,
that's why communication and expectations are important, right? So if you, and it's a really good point, Joe, because when our words may mean something different than it is our responsibility, the second rhythm in the relationship rhythm circle, it is our responsibility to be sure our communication is landing and we're listening and meeting the other person where they are as well. So that expectation, that communication, when we're coaching business folks, that's one thing. When we're coaching, individuals, people looking for romance or couples, same conversation that we're having with the business folks. It's literally the same conversation. It's just in a different setting. I think there are a couple of other questions. David, you had a question.
Joe, thank you for your question.
Love your perspective.
I was going to ask you a question, but I'll ask David instead.
Go ahead, David.
No, you don't have to. Joe's fine. You can ask him anyway. Thank you for putting the 4 rhythms into the chat: respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience. And I don't want to steal too much thunder away from your book. But I was wondering, you've been touching upon things obviously from the book and from your experiences, but is there anything that you could give everybody here who's maybe not as familiar with the book or anything like that, some other kind of takeaway, some other model or some other exercise that can really put that into play, other than what you've already discussed already this evening, but something directly from the book, because I think the book's brilliant. And I want to, and I have to go back because I looked at it many weeks ago when it first came out, but maybe share with all the audience here something directly from the book that they can put into practice in real time. Anything like that?
Yes.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David, for asking that. So I'm going to look at the reframing. Reframing is a tool, is a practice that all of us can take. We do it all the time, but reframing is looking at stories that you've made up in your life, or looking at something that you experience, and reframing it so that it supports you. If you have an experience and you immediately begin to feel, oh, I'm a victim, they did that to me, that victimization doesn't help you, doesn't support you. So you simply reframe it. Okay, I'm not a victim. It was an experience. What did I gain from the experience? What did I learn from the experience? What can I take with me from that experience that will support me moving on? So the exercises we do in our workshop about reframing is really just taking a story, an experience that you had in your life. It doesn't matter. Take an experience you had in your life and really just clearly say what the experience was. My mom slammed the car door on my fingers. The story I may have made up at the time is she was mad at me. She didn't like me. Well, when I reframed that, I realized, of course, my mom liked me. She didn't do that on purpose. She wouldn't harm me like that on purpose. So again, you reframe a situation. So David, that's a tactic and a tool that can be used in many ways. I
have another one too that we can share. Is anyone currently in a relationship that could use a little bit of spring cleaning and a tune-up? Anybody in a relationship that could use a little spring cleaning, a little tune-up? Okay, yes. Okay,
absolutely.
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 Got it. And so here's my other question. Who would you guys say your most significant relationship is with in your life? Louisa, don't answer.
Yourself.
And that, who else? Other thoughts?
I agree.
It could be any. It could be yourself. Could be your spiritual leader. It could be the earth. It could be your everybody around you at any given moment.
Yeah. So yes, and yes, and yes,
and yes. Yeah.
And that being said, literally the most significant relationship that we have, Annette said it, is with ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know about you guys. I was raised in a very close family, and I don't recall ever my parents saying to me, respect yourself, when I was growing up. I don't know if anybody else was ever. So my parents always said, respect others, be kind to others, we nurture others, we do all that.
Be careful how you speak to others.
Right. All of that. It was always about, so when we look at respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience, it was rarely, as I was growing up, about me, because my life was always about being in service and caring for others. It was only really, 20 years ago that I started to recognize, ew, the mirror of, if it's not working inside, stuff's showing up outside and I don't get how to deal with it. So I started to recognize, and that was kind of where, and it was probably about 30 years, but that's where all of this started to grow. Was I was hugely successful in business, but people were literally quitting their jobs after a year because I was a tough boss, because I would literally see in other people all the possibilities, yet they weren't quite ready to live up to it in some cases. So I was too tough of a boss. I wasn't necessarily communicating well. I was overpowering versus empowering. And that was showing up and coming from a history, the legacy of relationships for me of not being heard as a kid growing up, of not feeling confident. It kept showing up everywhere. And I was self-sabotaging right and left. So these were things that we learned over the years. And so David, the idea of these exercises. So an exercise I want to give you guys is if you are in a relationship that could use a little spring cleaning, okay, go back and look at, are we actually in agreement with our expectations? So an exercise you can do with yourself and with others, friends, family, colleagues, whatever that looks like. Look at one relationship, and at the bottom of the page, put the name of that relationship. So let's say it would be Ken in this case. On the left side of the page, list all the expectations you have of that person. On the right side of the page, list the expectations you believe they have of you. Now, have a conversation with that person. And are you in agreement? And because what you may find is that, wow, these expectations are not so in agreement right now in these two areas. Interesting. It opens up. So offer it as an opening of a conversation with someone in your life. If you're really close to them and you can say, you know what, I just heard this really cool exercise. I wonder if you would do it with me. I've never done it. I'm feeling a little funny about it. Or what about this? Husband, friend, colleague, spouse, partner, kids, whatever that looks like. And most importantly, are you in agreement? And are you in agreement with the expectations you have of yourself? So here's a second exercise. The second exercise is about respect. On the left side of the page, all the ways that you respect yourself. These are the wins. And every small win gets to be recognized and celebrated. All the ways you respect yourself. On the right, the ways that you disrespect yourself, and be honest. This is about getting messy and being honest. What you realize between those two is there's a bridge of choice between disrespecting myself and respecting myself. And the bridge of choice is how we shift in that, how we realign our expectations of ourselves. So a couple of exercises, David, those were just for you. I look forward to getting that email with your exercises.
I have a follow-up.
Louisa.
Sally had
jump in real quick. So let's say you are seeing the disrespect part, and like, for example, eating a bag of chips after I did a great workout. I know eating a bag of chips after I did a great workout isn't me respecting myself. What would be a thing I could go to in order to, like, knowing it is one thing, actually being able to do something in that moment is another. What would be a pattern interruption, let's just say, to create something new?
Well, the first thing, you're going to say what I'm going to say, I'm sure. We always do this. Go ahead.
So first of all, when you eat the bag of chips, celebrate. Don't beat yourself up.
Why do you think that's disrespecting yourself is my question, which is where Ken was going.
Celebrate. Don't eat the whole bag.
So that's it. Okay. So exactly that's it. First of all, reframe that, Louisa. You are having the bag of chips because you're craving the salt, and that's enjoyment for you. So why would you put the weight of judgment on top of that versus being in a space of agreement and choosing the enjoyment of it? That's number one. Number two is moderation. No one says you have to eat the whole bag. So you eat half the bag now and half the bag in 2 hours or whatever it is. It's not about taking something or judging self. It's about being in integrity with your choice and being in agreement with that choice and not beating yourself up over it.
I just had this picture of Louisa on the treadmill working out and eating chips.
Well, and by the way, impressive that you said chips and not bonbons. So that was
So we have some other questions.
Sally had a question. I want to get to Sally's.
Yes.
Yeah, well, being married and working together, I've done that for 20 plus years with my husband. And, I know how difficult at times, I fire him and he fires me.
Wait, I don't think Ken's ever fired me yet. That's a good one.
I'll say to him, "You're fired," and he shows up the next day anyway.
He's like, "I know you were just kidding, honey."
But, there are times when I need my individuality and I need to step away and do things. So, what we do a lot of times is we're going to the same place at the exact same time. We'll take two different cars because I just need to drive and be by myself sometimes. So what are some things that you guys do as individuals to make it work?
Well, one thing you just said that is really important, and that is having the space, right? So in a couplehood, and I really want to talk to you more about how you guys kind of working together, because in our workshops, we're actually working with a number of people who are working together as well, or who want to, and so we're working through some of those dynamics. So one of the first things for me sometimes, and I don't even know so much as Ken, is sometimes I just need space to miss him, right? Because when you're together 24/7, and it doesn't take much. And that you and I had a brief conversation about this in California last year. It is, I would say that probably for me, I sometimes need the social time more than Ken does. So I will go out with girlfriends. We literally carve that time out. And it's always sort of a request of each other. Hey, would you mind if this weekend, or would you mind if whatever this night? It never comes from a place of dictating. It's always an open communication. Hey, do you want to go spend some time with the guys? What's happening? And it literally takes me saying to Ken, dude, call the guys. Like, you seriously, you get to like head out, because it's less his nature to need and to expect that time for himself. That being said, when we put Ken in our room next door is Ken's office. When we put Ken in his office and he starts to record, I could literally jump off the roof and he'd never know. So what happens is, this is where Ken goes for Ken's time, is he goes and he records, to the point that on many occasions.
Well, tonight, for example, I was working on a track for a song. And so I'm working with the studio and I'm headphones on, and I left my phone in the other room.
And I was at a meeting with a client.
Maris was out at a meeting, and so Maris comes back, and I'm there. I'm working, and Maris says, "By the way, I've been calling you." So there's some tricks to it. There's ways to do it, but yes, that time
it's really
that
important.
Space for yourself, and again, just say it.
It's important to be able to talk about it,
and not make the other person feel bad or
wrong
or diminished by having space. We all need space. We all need that from it, and it's a choice. So thank you, Sally. It's a great question.
And it also happens with business teams. Like we literally, sometimes teams also that are working together that closely just get to have a break from each other. It's just how that. So Sally, did that answer for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Annette.
Well, I wanted to make sure. I think David had his hand up before mine. No? Okay, then I get to go forward. Well, first of all, I want a shameless plug for your book, okay?
Thank you.
I'm looking at the part which I love, which is chapter 13, inspiration. Inspiration is the power tool of creative vision. And I think that is, it just resonated so much with me, because I used to admire people that were creatives and I didn't think I was one. And then I realized, yes, I am. And that we don't teach the vocabulary words, because I didn't learn these in the family that I grew up in. We did not have good communication, and very little communication when it came to rapport, respect, responsibility, reframe, resilience, relationship, to represent yourself, resistance, record, and rhythm. Those are all wonderful terms that I am just now starting to really take into my own life, and then be able to impart those, to give that vocabulary to my own children. So I just wanted to come from a place of gratitude thank you. And to just know that resilience for me has been the fortitude. I've been with my husband now for 42 years, and it's been exceedingly difficult. I thought it would get easier and less messy. No. You have to constantly keep it up at the front. So thank you guys for this book. It's been a godsend. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette.
I'm so glad.
And if you mind if I add something to you, Annette. So one thing I would just, and maybe you do this, but yes, it is a process being in a relationship, a consistent relationship, and hats off to you for 40 years. Amazing.
40 plus.
40 plus. But you also get to think about your 40 years together and celebrate. Celebrate the big moments and celebrate the little moments constantly. Constantly celebrate. I say to Maris, thanks for making dinner. Thanks, Maris, for doing the laundry. Thank you. Maris says to me, thank you for putting the dishes away. Wherever you have an opportunity to thank a person you're in relationship with, do it. Don't miss an opportunity. It's like the number on the, take a number. Whenever you have an opportunity to thank somebody, go for it and do it. And I think it's certainly the same with husband and wife, significant others, team members, employees. A thank you goes so far for everybody. Maris and I say that one of the secrets to our success is, okay, I'm going to share it, Maris. We make love multiple times a day. Yeah, there you go. And how do we do that?
Drop the mic.
How do we do that? We make love by,
small acts of kindness.
I take out the garbage. I do the
love
dishes.
Language, yeah.
I make the bed sometimes with the
pillows.
God, amazing number of pillows.
I bring him
on
coffee,
the bed.
Yeah. I mean, it's all those pieces, you guys. And I think that, it's all that. It's also recognizing that we are constantly evolving in our relationships. We choose the rhythm of our day when we wake up in the morning, when we start our day with gratitude. We invite you guys to do that. And I think, Louisa, you're going to drop probably the link to our website where you can actually pop your email in and we'll send you a gratitude practice guide. But we literally say every day, if we do not wake up in a space of gratitude, then we're selling ourselves short. The sun rises, the moon rises, the trees grow. They ask nothing of us, and yet we take all day long from them. So when we wake up in this space of gratitude and say, okay, I'm grateful for waking up. I'm grateful I've got crazy things coming at me today, but I'm on it. I got it. And then at the end of the day, be grateful for what we've been through. There are no measurements of wins and successes. They are a win, they are a success, and they happen all day, and we get to honor that.
I want to touch on that real quick. On top of what you just said, again, standing behind the chair and also being in relationship with so many people, not only do people have a difficult time saying thank you, everything that goes wrong, they're like, did you see, this is what he does, this is what she does, did you see, and they point out all the things that the person is doing wrong, and yet not very rarely do they go, wow, I'm so lucky to be with this person. I get a lot of did you see all the things that are wrong with the situation? Because that person really, in essence, is a mirror of ourselves. And all the things we're frustrated with ourselves for, we somehow see when someone else is doing wrong. So when we're concentrating so much of that during the day, of course we miss the gratitude, right? And I love, if we were to remember to stay in gratitude, those other things would get less and less.
Yeah, it's so important, Louise. It's so important that you say that. And I think too, that, look, we are human beings, right? So when we focus on the doing, which is all our headspace, because that's what we've been trained to do growing up, we don't always trust the feeling, right? And to go there. And the fact is, when you wake up in a space of feeling, we always have a choice to shift from wherever we're sitting. So if we're feeling gratitude and we don't really want to get into that space, we can kind of have a crappy day and not be in a space of gratitude, but that's our choice. The muscles that it takes to keep working on that. So one of the things that we say is over the course of a day, every hour at some point, train yourself to take a cleansing breath. Because when we learn how to breathe our way through something, we will respond versus react because we're taking a breath before coming out and reacting to something.
Yep. And
we're taking that grounding time to just get back in touch with ourselves to go, 1 minute, need to check in. You know,
this whole idea of responding versus reacting. You know, when we get an invitation to go to a fancy ball, a gala or something like that, we get an invitation.
Or just a birthday party.
And it says RSVP. That doesn't mean reactez-vous, s'il vous plaît. It's respondez-vous, s'il vous plaît. So even in that sort of thing, we can realize that there's a difference between reacting, which comes from the past. It has nothing to do with the moment, and responding, which takes a thoughtful approach. So David has his hand up, and I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Oh, that's perfect.
I think
David.
Louisa's in charge. You are not the boss of the show.
Well, you know, I don't really. You guys, that's a great place to end this. If you want you guys have just covered it.
Go for it, David.
No. I wanted to revisit the reframing for a second because I believe you've touched upon it, and I believe everybody here at some point has had certain issues. But reframing, when you were talking about stories that you tell yourself and about the mindset in which you are in when you were telling yourself that story, because two people can have the same set of facts, be going through the same exact experiences, saying, I did this class, I got turned down on this audition, I got turned down on this audition, got turned down from this job, my book didn't get published, or this, and the exact same person can have this, and they'll be like despondent. They'll be like, this is never going to happen. And another person can have the exact same experiences and be like, you know what, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. It's going to break for me tomorrow. You know, it's going to happen for me tomorrow. Same set of facts, two totally different frames.
Yeah, I think that reframing. So I'm going to give you two examples. One example is that when I was 8 years old, my parents had another child, my sister. So my mom started taking care of my sister, the little baby. Somehow I made up this story that, oh, I'm not important. I'm not worthwhile. I'm not, and I carried this story with me and I didn't realize I had. It was subconsciously buried and I didn't realize I had till a friend talked to me about it at one point in time and it came to light. Oh my God, I've been carrying this self-doubt my whole life.
And not good enough, not worthy
not
almost,
good enough.
right? It kept showing up.
And it wasn't true. I mean, we all go through experiences. We have many experiences, and the experiences have no meaning. Nothing, no meaning. We are great meaning makers. We want to make us. So that was something that I established to that, which I broke through. And the bigger program is that I had this opportunity to work with astronaut of Apollo 17, Captain Eugene Cernan. And we spent together an evening and he was telling me about being on the moon. He was the last man to walk on the moon. And he said when he looked back at Earth, he saw no borders, no divisions between people, no boundaries. He saw one planet, one Earth in this small planet. And we all get to recognize that we're all connected. So again, that was a reframing in a huge way. If you all remember, 1972 was the first time we saw the big blue marble. And we really realized where we were. So a couple of things, David. Does that answer your question?
You're muted.
You're muted.
You always answer my questions and more. So thank you.
Cool.
Louisa, can I give a reframing quick perspective for folks, just a tool?
Absolutely. And I love that Ken actually put your website on there and how to get a hold of you guys. So I just wanted to highlight that it's in the chat. Thank you, Ken.
Okay. Yeah. So if you guys want to do any work with us, or you want to pick up the book, or you want to get the gratitude practice guide, please visit us there, or just send us a message there if you want. One of the things about reframing in terms of literally an exercise around reframing is, I think we forget in the moment that there's a moment that we're reacting to that gets to be reframed. If you've gotten to a place of reframing, it means you've reacted to something, right? Something's going on there, right? Something's happening. So I'm going to teach you something that is just a quick skill that you get to build and work on. Okay. If you're in a situation of reframing, it's because you're feeling something. So the first thing you get to do is acknowledge it. You can't heal it if you can't feel it. So we feel it to heal it. We acknowledge how we're feeling, because if we're reacting to something, it's because it came from somewhere else, an experience yesterday, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago back there. It might have been the legacy of our parents, might be in our culture. So we get to face it. So face it is freely acknowledge current emotion, FACE. Freely acknowledge current emotion. So when something's coming up for you, literally a trigger, a feeling, or whatever, and I will tell you that I literally put my hand up, I face it, I say what it is. Wow, I'm feeling really crappy about this, or I'm feeling really down about this. What's going on? I face it, I acknowledge it, I feel it, and then I invite it to the curb. Because I can at that point say, I got it, I understand. But you're not helping me right now. You're not serving me right now. So I invite it off. And that's a constant something that we get to keep feeling into that, because once we feel it and we can acknowledge it and we get in relationship with it, we can navigate it. Does that help? Does that support you guys? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Great. Awesome.
This is super fantastic. I love watching you guys, and I love, I was telling you both, and I hate admitting this out loud, but after doing hair for 25 years and seeing so many really challenged relationships, when I was still married and when people would get divorced, here was my thought. I would think, where do you think you're going? As if there's any possibility to be happy. And I really didn't know. At the time, you really could be happy. I really didn't know that there were couples like Ken and Maris, because it's rare. But being around this work now, having done the work myself, I actually see more beautiful couples than I see not beautiful couples now. And it is so magnificent to know that what you're doing is really inspiring so many more people to have the mirror, realize we really do have our first relationship with ourselves. And when we do, we show up so much more powerfully with each other. And who we get to be is just magical because of the work we do. And I love experiencing both of you, because you're individually magical, and together you're a powerhouse. And doesn't everybody want like the power couple? And I remember asking a gentleman I was coaching, I said, spend some time with your wife. And he said, I don't have the time to give. And I said, here's the thing. And again, like I see this often, all of a sudden some gorgeous girl gives him attention and he has an extra 6 hours in the day that he didn't have an extra 20 minutes. And we find the time when we want it. So if we do spend the time with our partners and the time with our family and the time with everything that is important to us, it grows.
Absolutely. And it's so, I love how you said that. And it's so important. And one thing I really want to just leave you guys with a really important one-liner. You are the one relationship you can't leave home without. And our brains can only process positive or negative at the same time. They cannot process both. So if we know that we are the one relationship we can't leave home without, then why would we not be kind to ourselves?
Absolutely.
Why would we not acknowledge and respect ourselves and be in responsibility for what we're telling ourselves, right? Be for yourself what you want to see in others.
Yeah.
Be for yourself what you want to see in others, because that's where it starts. That's where it ends.
Right. And Maris, I love that you say that, because I know that positive and negative in my head, that absolutely rings true. But how I experience that, because I'm like, can you choose to stand up and sit down at the same time? You can't.
Wait. Can we try that?
Yes. I've had a million people try.
No.
It doesn't work. So I have this in absolute proof. It will not work to stand and sit exactly at the same time. You've got to choose one. So I'm like, you know what? If I have to choose one, I'm going to do the one that works for me, because it's just a choice. Why not choose the one that works for me?
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And the only way to be in service to others is to be cleaned up with what we've got going on inside. That's how we get to be whole people, right? So it really is, people talk so often about living a balanced life. Ken and I don't take that approach because of this. When we're looking at a scale and you're in the center, what are we doing? We're always teetering to create the balance. We come at it from a whole other perspective. It's really about weaving into an integrated life. It's about integrating our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives. It's one life. We have one life, one body, one planet. That's it. So bringing it all together will consistently, with consistent respect, responsibility, reframing, resilience, communication, all these pieces, if it's working in one area of your life, it's working in all areas of your life.
Exactly.
Thank you all. Thank you, Louisa, David, BJ, Clarissa, Joe, Shelley, Dorinda, Sylvia, Annette. Thank you all for being here and we love doing this, and it's just so much fun to be with you and to talk about it.
And Louisa, what you're creating is wonderful. You know how much we love you and appreciate you, and just honor the work you're doing.
Thank you. It really is just so much fun. I'm like, I get to play and call this. I don't even call it work. Everyone's like,
it's not work.
It's not work.
It's not work. Everyone's like, you work so hard. I'm like, really? What do I do?
Well, when we love it and when we're in relationship with it, even the challenging times are easier to get through because we're committed and we're clear and we can see the end in mind, so we know we commit to our vision.
I think the only hard part ever is if I have this expectation of, and I teach this in my 8-week course, and week 1 is no expectations. And so in my head, when I have an expectation of how it's supposed to look, then I would give up, because I'm like, it's never flawless. And so then I think if I let go of what that expectation is of flawless perfection, whatever, right? And I get to just continue building, growing, even asking David to do the intro. It made me so happy to share this space with him. Know he's actually fabulous at it. Take the pressure off of me. The entire experience feels tremendously better for me. And I'm like, everybody has their magic spot in here. And something that might have been stressing me out all year no longer does, because David just did that part and he enjoys it.
Well, and Louisa, I want to call forward also how that happened for you. You asked, so you reframed what was possible around doing the intros. You asked for support, right? So there's that's what happened when we're stepping into a resilient space. We asked for support, and you empowered someone else with your generosity to be able to contribute.
And I learned it from Greg Reed watching at Secret Knock, because I was like, he's not over there micromanaging every single step of whatever he's doing. So as we're doing this and as we're watching other people, these aha moments show up. I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't like it.
I love it. I love it. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. This is fan-freaking-tastic, and I cannot wait to do it again, always.
Oh, so great to meet everybody. And if you guys want to connect with us, find us on our website.
Yes, it's down in the chat. and or contact me, and I have direct connection with these two men.
Louisa has the bat phone. She definitely has the bat phone.
I do.
Hi, Tara. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good, you guys. Thank you.
I love her background. It makes me feel like she's on vacation somewhere.
I know. Where are you? Where is that?
That was in oh my gosh, where did I just go? Dubai.
Oh,
Around. Where did I just go? Tara, I didn't realize that. I literally thought it was one of those Zoom backgrounds. I didn't realize you've actually been there. That's
No, that was right outside of the Burj Khalifa. They have a water show and everything. Yeah, that was a video I took. It's just not, it's a still photo from it.
oh my gosh. How gorgeous. How amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
I thought you just beautifully found this wonderful picture. So I do have to share a real quick story since we're still on here for half a second. I went through my client's house. I was in the middle of doing her hair and I was like, can I take pictures of your house? Because I want to use it as my background for my Zoom. And I asked, but didn't listen for an answer because I somehow didn't totally care. And so I went around and took pictures. And then she goes, seriously, Louisa, I love you because you just went ahead and took pictures and you thought just asking enough was going to like take you there. I was like, yeah. And this whole like listening.
And did she say no?
No, it was totally fine. She's a therapist. She had to like bring that to light.
Of course. Of course. I love that.
So,
Great.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.